in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
And welcome to the Author Brand Show, where we have lots of rational thoughts, but I always find that a funny clip, so I love playing it because I can always look at my guest in the green room saying, does he get that? I'm not talking about him. It's just a joke. Welcome to the show. Today I'm your host, Doug Crowe, the Author Brand Show, where you're going to want to take notes. And if you don't, it's okay because show notes are below. Our guest today has got an amazing background. I can't read his whole profile here because it could be a book unto itself. He's a doctor. All right. So he used to be an account manager at Deloitte. He has a stint as a professional boxer in Argentina, accepted medical school at age 37 after being repeatedly told can't do that. And his state of, not being part of the status quo, right? His patients range from A-list celebrities, world-class athletes, because he practices something near and dear to my heart, regenerative and sports medicine. And he's in search of innovative treatments, and he specializes in that. So he does bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. That's a mouthful. BHRT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, cryotherapy. He's dedicated the last 35 years to redefining what it means to have this term, optimal health. So he's got a lot of degrees. Welcome to Death and author of Cheating Death, Dr. McClain. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So we got a lot to cover. I love your topic. Before we do, I want to let people know that we're going to cover some things here which are maybe they haven't heard before, might be controversial, like your book title. Obviously, you said before the show started, you can't cheat death, but you can do what with your life?
You can improve Healthspan. The idea is to not be stricken with the idea that we're going to spiral the drain, and just continually spiral into old age and ill health, probably more importantly to most than anybody else or anything else. We used to call it squaring the curve, right? So that we maintain our level of good health, relative good health, and then if we're lucky, one day just die in our sleep, right?
That's optimal.
Yeah. So that's really the purpose of the book, is to let people know
that's
that
right.
We have a lot of alternatives now that we didn't know about. Most of us still don't know about to increasing our health span.
Right. I love that. It's funny. I was talking to people about this topic. I'll just talk a little bit. You can please chime in, but yeah, lifespan is one thing, and there's health span. The difference is lifespan is like how long can you live, and people tend to forget that the last few years of life, medical insurance companies know this better than anybody. Like we spend 80% of our entire fortune past in the last 6 months of life. It's usually on things that are just propping up the body up. And we see people declining like this, and it's like, okay, my last 5, 10, 15 years can be crappy. Doesn't sound like fun, but we cling to this existence as opposed to clinging to optimal health. If I've got that, not paraphrased, but spoken, what you're going for here. So there's a lot of things we understand about our bodies. A lot of things you said we don't understand about optimal health. What don't we know?
What don't we know is the subject of probably a whole nother book. The old expression, there's a lot of things we know that we don't know, but what we don't know is always the mystery. Right? But
right.
I think the book focuses more on what we used to not know, as it were, right? But now know differently. Yeah. And we do know that medicine has been progressing almost logarithmically, decade by decade. And if we look back 100 years ago, the advances we've made in 10 years alone, probably less than that, eclipse what we learned in 100 years. So, what don't we know has changed a lot, and that's the purpose of the book. I want to spread the word, along with people like you that help me do so, and have an interest in it, which is fortunate, because it is very motivating, if nothing else, to know that we don't have to spiral into old age. I've never met anybody, I don't think you probably have either, that said, hey, I'll trade 5 years of good health for 20 bad ones on the back end, right? Nobody wants to do that. In fact, it's the opposite. Yeah.
Right. So it's a hard question. Well, we don't know, of course. What about things that we thought we knew, but in the past few years, that's not true at all? I mean, I could think of the one obvious one is this food pyramid that we all grew up with. Now it's well, that's dumb. What else besides that?
Well, that one's an easy one to debunk because most of the so-called science behind that is epidemiological, retrospective observational studies, and it's most of it really. I was just having this conversation the other day. Probably 90% of that stuff is garbage anyway. And anyone who tells you there's one way to eat anyway is, run away, because it depends upon so many different factors. But to your question, one thing is, two things I would easily harp on. One is that our genes define us, and we realize now that that's just the beginning, a basis from which we can then alter our path based upon really what's reflected as our epigenetics, how you conduct yourself, your activities of daily living, we call it, how you eat, how you sleep, whether you take care of yourself or not in a general sense can affect your genes, which ones are activated and which ones are not. So it's not like, okay, well, you've got, for example, this ApoE4 gene, which everyone associates with Alzheimer's. It's been in the news recently. A famous actor has let everyone know he's got that gene, but it doesn't mean that you're going to fall into that category. It means you have a window which is tilted that way, this vortex, if you will. But it doesn't mean that if you take care of yourself, you're necessarily going to, spiral into old age with dementia. The other thing that's fascinating to me is that we were taught in not just in medical school, but since we were born, that the brain is hardwired. Well, we know that's not true. You're not stuck with those cells and only those cells. First of all, you can make new brain cells. That's unbelievable to those who were born 60 years ago. But also what we call the plasticity of the brain. You can change the way the brain cells function. Sometimes, and it's been proven through, unfortunately, accidents and pathologies that we look into after the fact, and that this area of the brain was designed to do this, but because it was damaged, then this part of the brain takes over and if you will. To me, those are two easily harped upon fast new understandings.
I was talking to a behavioral psychologist about this, and talk about personality types. And he said, "Oh, you can change your personality." I'm like, "What? I know you can cognitively change them. How do you rewire your personality?" And it's like, well, and he went through some of what you just said. You can actually start rewiring things on your own if you have the intention to do it and a path to do it. I found that pretty fascinating. In terms of Healthspan, I want to talk about cryotherapy, because I've done the chamber about 2 or 3 times. I've done the ice bath a couple times. So I want to know, number one, tell people the benefits of that, because you're into that. And then is there a difference between doing the, negative 300 air or the 50-degree water?
Well, I'll start with the easier question, which is, you can use either one. You just don't want to stay too long in the water-based therapies, because you can get hypothermic very. And you say, well, no, come on, you're only at 32 degrees if you're in ice water, whereas you can be in something as cold as 250 below. My machine goes to below, but that's really cold. But it doesn't get you to the bone, so to speak. And you don't need to get cold to the bone, by the way. You want a change in surface temperature, which tells the body to release noradrenaline. And believe it or not, I know it sounds funny, you release heat shock proteins. I know you're getting cold, but that's just their name. And there are benefits to both. Noradrenaline is that pick me up, that when you leave the 3 minutes in the cryotherapy, you go, wow, okay, I'm ready for the day. That was better than a cup of coffee. And I don't have the jagginess that comes with it either. That noradrenaline boost gives you an uplifted mood, and yet somehow you still seem to be relaxed. And then underneath all that, the heat shock proteins are protected for the cell. So that's an easy one right there. And I would argue that it's easier to do the cryotherapy. Now, not everyone has an extra $250,000 in their back pocket, to spend on a machine at home. So the ice therapy for $150, I bought my machine on Amazon, where I get 60 pounds of ice in the tub, and really no 10 minutes is required at most. You can do it for 5 and get the same at home.
Yeah. And I know it reduces inflammation too, right? It helps other benefits to the cold therapy, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a general, a broad stroke of how it works. And we all know that inflammation is not good for you, not just for the painful joints that it helps. You can reverse the inflammation with ice, but there's a new term, inflammaging. We know that inflammation gums up the work, so to speak, at a cellular level. When things are inflamed, things aren't functioning properly, and then there's a push me pull you effect there. I like to refer to it like exhaust. So if a cell's not working properly because it's inflamed, either because of its own internal workings or a cell nearby that, again, to use the car analogy, hasn't been tuned properly, and so it's spewing exhaust everywhere, not only messing with the driver of the cell itself, but those around it. So yeah, inflammation's a big thing to get rid of, and yeah, the cryotherapies are useful for that purpose for sure.
Yeah, I did the I was at a sports medicine place over in Thailand, and some billionaire built this great complex. And my son and I, he's a boxer like he was. I'll talk about that in a second. So we were working out, and I'm his dad, so I'm like, it was tiring for me, a little hard. And there was a Russian Olympic athlete in this cold tub, and we're like, oh, I'll try that. I'm like, ooh, I lasted like a minute. By the third day, I'm like, I could do this. And I did like 15 minutes, which I know a little too long, but I was test myself, but I wasn't sore afterwards. So the rest of the week, I could work out as hard as I wanted to, jump in that thing, and I wasn't sore. I mean, that's good for my body, right? When I'm not sore, is that bad? Does it matter?
Well, without getting too far into the weeds, yes and no. You need to give yourself a little bit of time post-workout before you jump in the cold, because there are some studies showing that you can reduce the body's ability to repair, and maybe more importantly or specifically, to make muscle. So if you've done a strenuous high-intensity workout where you're trying to build muscle tissue,
right?
I believe most studies will point to leaving an hour, maybe as much as 2, between the end of workout and when you jump in the ice bath to ensure that you get the hypertrophy you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, we were doing like sauna, steam, and then the ice bath. Maybe so an hour or 2. Good to note that. Okay, so this is why I love my show, because I can get advice on these things from my professional guests here. So, all right, so workout, give myself an hour or 2, and then I can jump in the cold stuff. That's good. And then I have another doctor friend who was talking about oxygen therapy. Tell us about that. I got a question about that as well. O2 therapy.
Well, I'd love to see if you get similar reactions to hyperbaric oxygen therapy as you did with the icing therapy, because I've experienced that with bicycling. I know plenty of patients have, where normally, let's say, without hyperbaric oxygen therapy, you might do out here in Santa Monica Hills some hill training for 2-3 days. By the third day on the bicycle in the hills, you're smoked. Your legs are telling you, hey, stop. If you do the hyperbaric oxygen therapy after each workout, you can feel just as good, not only the third day, but even the 5th day. It aids in recovery in a couple ways, one of which is you're compressing oxygen so that it can get further down the line, so to speak, into the blood vessels than it could otherwise, because again, it's becoming smaller, access more that way. But also, we know that it helps release stem cells from the bone marrow. So those are 2 easy explanations anyway as to why it works. You could also argue that because of it, this could be considered one of the drawbacks, because of the time spent. You normally have to, we call it a dive, go diving for at least an hour or so. For most of us, that's more recovery time than we would normally give ourselves anyway, just to sit there and relax afterwards. So you can think of at least 3 mechanisms by which that works.
Wow. Would that work if I got an oxygen bottle and just breathe it, or I got to have the whole body on it?
That's a great question. But yeah, with hyperbaric oxygen, again, part of the benefit is because of that compression. So the oxygen molecules are even smaller, can get further down the line into the blood vessels. So yeah, not going to be the same.
No. Okay. Just thinking budget wise, you're not maybe afford a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, right? So it's.
Well, there is a budgetary constraint. Some of the soft shells, which don't allow you to dive to as much pressure, as many pounds per square inch, but still considered effective to a large degree. The soft shells, they call them, are probably $15,000 these days. So you could have one at home if you don't want to have a car instead. No, I mean, obviously, yeah, there are some constraints to that. Maybe you could split it with the neighborhood, and you could all pitch in.
There you go. Well, probably be against some HOAs, but yeah, it'd be a good idea to share something like that. Cool. That's amazing stuff. So in terms of things people can do for themselves, we'll get into the higher level things, in terms of that, what can a person do with, as a captain of their own ship? What can they do at home to get a better health span?
Great. The do-it-yourself ones are one we already mentioned, the at-home cold therapy. It's even easier. I
Mhm.
was joking the other day, if you live in Canada, just step outside with your skivvies and a
Like,
t-shirt on, you get your cold
yeah.
therapy very easily.
Mhm.
Other than that, you can, I guess you could, without spending money, you could find a way to heat yourself. You can build your own sauna. Those are
Yeah.
relatively cheap, certainly compared to hyperbaric oxygen.
Sure.
You're not going to like this answer. Nobody does because, yeah, grandma's been telling me that. Great grandma's been telling me that forever, and everyone knows that. But you know what? Nobody does it. Getting enough sleep, getting a proper amount of exercise, and
Mhm.
eating properly are the three basics that you really need to have. You can't ignore those. All the other tricks,
Yeah.
like supplements that you can use to benefit
Yeah.
yourself, and that's an individual consideration because some people, I always say you can read the label on these things, and of course you're going to buy them all based upon what it boasts on the label.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you do need them, and there are ways to decide whether it's apropos to take some of these supplements, that's something you can do yourself. You can remember to take them. A lot of people keep them in the cupboard, but that's only part of the way. You got to actually ingest them.
Mhm.
And then there are things that you will need the help of or you should engage the help of a physician or a medical provider, but that you can
Mhm.
do in home. You mentioned earlier hormonal replacement therapy,
Right.
peptide therapy, one of my favorites because the door's
Mhm.
wide open as to what we can develop there.
Yeah.
Um, those are some easy ones that you can do without. I mean, now gene editing, obviously, that's going to require a lot more, and certainly a physician. Although you know
Right.
what, I say that, and there was a documentary I saw where I think a guy out of the Northwest and San Francisco area, I think, was selling these gene editing kits, and guys were breeding dogs that were purple and glow in the dark and stuff like that. I know it's right out of a science fiction movie, but yeah, for
Wow.
us that are doing this for Healthspan and prudently, yeah, that's not a do-it-yourselfer.
Yeah. No, I always fancy doing a book with a guaranteed weight loss book. If you apply what's in this book, guaranteed lose weight, and it was 2 pages, right? Eat right and exercise. I probably add sleep to that one, but we all know what's right. Movement of any kind is going to be better than non-movement, and we all know what eating right means. It's eating raw food, whatever that is for you. It's just it's so simple. It's like, yeah, you can't really you know I was talking to somebody about, I wrote a short article on it years ago about, the reason we're all got screwed up here is because there's, billions of dollars of marketing money telling us, you know, eat milk, don't eat milk, whatever, all these different things, supplements, weight loss, gyms, all these things. There's billions of dollars being poured into this stuff, but there's no International Broccoli Growers Association. I looked it up. There is one that says eat some broccoli every day, and gosh, it's a superfood. What the
Well,
heck? That's
that's true. Do you remember? I think it was in the Wall Street Journal years back. They found something in broccoli that when they isolated the component, I don't remember what it was, but they felt it caused cancer. So broccoli was bad for you. Salt was bad for you, remember? And then they figured out, well, maybe it's not bad for everybody. If you don't eat salt, you might have a problem, especially if you're an athlete. And so, yeah, it confuses things. And so while
yeah.
it sounds mundane to say, oh, sleep and nutrition in the book, and forget about the book, just in general, uh, there are some nuances, we'll call them, to each of those areas.
Mhm.
And I think part of the reason why people get confused is because they don't understand some of those nuances, such as, to get enough sleep, unless you have a very rare gene mutation, for example, you need 7 to 9. Now,
Yep.
people will get 7 and go, "Oh, I'm still frustrated." Well, I said 7 to 9, and it's not that I said it, that's what the studies say. And it might be
Oh yeah.
7.5 for you or 8.5 for me, and
Yeah.
so frustrated with only 7 because it didn't do the trick for you. So,
Mhm.
and ditto for nutrition, and we touched on that. Anyone who tells you there's one way, they're nuts. You find the way that works best for you, not only
Right.
for you genetically, but in your situation, whether it has to do
Yeah.
with your age, where you live, what you do for a living, how hard you exercise or don't. And then, of course, exercise ditto. And you made a point earlier, no matter what it is, the very definition of life includes movement. And so, whether it's gardening movement, which is very different than, say, an elite amateur's training program on the
Yep.
bicycle,
Right.
um, both of them are valuable and valuable for different reasons. And
Mm.
that elite amateur athlete would benefit from the gardening and typically, and you go, wait a minute, the guy is on the bike for 6 hours a day and you still suggest you do some gardening? In other words, some really light exercise? Absolutely, for different reasons, because it does different stuff.
Yeah.
So teasing out the differences there, I think, is important. And in understanding, of course, I think it helps people stay compliant with it, because they go, oh, okay, that's what you mean by proper nutrition, sleep, and exercise, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, talk about the diet thing. I agree with you 100%, because, somebody who was, born in Alaska versus someone who's born in the Mediterranean, they have two different, ways that they eat, and it's based on epigenetics, based on DNA, based on where they live. There's so many variances there. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna, eat, whale blubber every day and be okay here living in Charleston. It's just not gonna work for me. So
Great story too.
it's
I'm not gonna remember the name of it, but speaking of an Alaskan, there was a
Yeah.
bicycle rider, and I'm not gonna remember his name, but they had him on the standard way of eating for most bicyclists in the training camp,
Yeah.
which involves certain, typically high level of carbohydrates and protein.
Yeah.
This guy had an
Yeah.
Alaskan heritage, and when they finally switched him over to a higher fat-based diet, all of a sudden his times came back up to what they expected when they first brought him on the team.
Yeah. Hello, genetics. Hello. I'm an Inuit. This is my body was designed this way for a million years. Don't try to mess with that with your new stuff. Yeah. Which makes me think, I'm wondering, because I was in, my wife and I spent 6 months in Brazil, and we drank every day, and we were in better shape than up here eating better than. I don't understand why that is, but
I can argue that that's another factor that we don't normally account for, because it kind of gets into woo-woo science. It's hard to quote unquote prove, because it's hard to isolate those that do well with handling stress with things like meditation. We'll finally have the close enough to the gold standard to be able to say, hey, there's absolute scientific proof to doing so. But I would argue, we call it the vacation phenomena, right? Everyone loses weight even though they drink and eat like I don't want to say like a pig, but way off the path of their normal diet plan, right? When they're on vacation, but they come home and they go, oh, yeah, but I lost weight. Not only did I lose weight, I lost fat, more importantly, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, you're relaxed, you're moving again, even if it's just walking around town instead of in your car. And I would argue, having been down to Brazil too, that the lifestyle is not necessarily, at least when I was down there, conducive to that kind of stress we live in here. And that's enough to make it more healthy, for sure.
People, there's the golden nugget for this conversation right here. Honey, we can move back to Brazil. Your attitude and your energy and environment have as much, I'm sort of joking, she might come in, might have as much or more to do with, no, it's okay, you come in if you want. This is a good podcast interview. That is really helpful. So I actually tend to be on vacation all the time as I'm working, like I did for those that during the pandemic. I was in better shape then. Interesting. Huh.
I think it's part of the French paradox we talk about. I'm just picking the French because they're they're the group of Europeans we refer to, because the conversation usually starts off with the fact that they drink and they eat a lot of rich food. But if you go over there, you see that they don't eat a lot of that rich food, first of all.
Right.
They move a lot, and their life does not revolve around. And this is the same with a lot of different places. I lived in Argentina off and on, and that's the first thing I noticed, is that the lifestyle is different. I would come back to kind of your point about being in Brazil. I would come back. First of all, I dreaded going down there for whatever reason. Every time I went for 3 weeks, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to have a good phone system. Then I got down there, and when it was time to come back to the States for 3 weeks, dreading coming back to the States. Oh my God, I got to the States, because you get used to the lifestyle down there. And invariably, I would come back, and people would say, my God, Rand, what did you do? You look so much better. You look so much different. You look so relaxed and healthy. Well, my lifestyle was getting up at 6 o'clock at a minimum every morning. We were on set or training or doing something at 7:30 in the morning. Okay. Skipping breakfast. I was lucky to have what they call a cortadito, a little espresso or several, and essentially some miniature croissant, right? Didn't eat until 1:30, but lunchtime was from 1:30 to 3:30, because it wasn't about eating. It was about being social, that connectedness, which is another thing that has to do with staying relaxed and being human and feeling safe and calm. And if someone came that you said, hey, we're going to meet you for lunch at 2:45 instead of 1:30, there was no stressing. Oh, sure, come on over. You kind of start all over again. And then, this goes, I'm saying this, I'm taking time to say this because it goes against everything we're taught. And it goes back to that same thing about do what works for you. So then you go back to work at 3:30 or whatever it is, because it is kind of whatever it is. You don't go home to your home, your box at 6:30. No, you typically act at 8:30. You go to the club, again, a social environment where you play soccer.
Dinner at 10.
Yeah. And then you shower up, you finish, and you start dinner at 11:30. You finish by 1:30 or 2, and then again you're getting up at 6. So it's going counter to, now I was younger back then, but it's going counter to the sleep doctrine we have. But again, you do so much better because you're not, I don't want to say burning the candle at both ends, because it would include some wine with dinner and stuff like that, and maybe going out on the weekend and stuff like that. But you were overall better because of that. Again, it's harder to it's not as tangible as these other things we can measure. That relaxed environment.
It would be hard. It would be interesting to do some kind of controlled study on that, to have somebody working versus like living in that country, or any like transfer Brazil or something like that. Be very interesting to find that out. I'm gonna do a little experiment with that in the next couple of years, I think, because we had a good time down there. So you were on the side note, completely unrelated. I want to hear about this boxing in Argentina thing. Professional boxing.
First of all, I don't know why that one keeps coming up as boxing. I used to box underneath a guy, one of my all-time heroes, top 3, Bojack, Sidney Walker. He was the lightweight champ back in the 1940s, and one of my all-time heroes, one of the toughest guys, nicest guys, best guys I've ever known. We were never good enough, according to him, to box underneath him. So we would sneak around, and I was invited. I got into kickboxing down in Argentina to fight with Hector Echevarria in La Luna Park there a few times. Exhibition, and so I was kickboxing down there, and it led to some of the other things I got to do down there too, which was a lot of fun, and it opened up the door to Argentina. But as you can tell, Bo was not good on defensive instruction, so I have a nose to prove that. But it was a great experience. I wouldn't do it for a living because of what we know now. Unfortunately, the long-term damage.
Yeah.
But
my son is doing the second round of the Golden Gloves this coming month, and I'm like, okay, you can have fun with that while you're. Like, don't do a career, man. Just So we'll see.
Well, great segue for that. Just as your father, as his father, excuse me, you can appreciate this as a viable option, and I would encourage him to at least harvest his own cells from his fat, if he's got any fat, while he can, because we've done studies, albeit with animals, not humans just yet, although we are in the midst of, literally in the middle of a post-concussion syndrome study using autologous, meaning one's own stem cells, to reverse the damage. And we've seen great benefits so far, but we haven't published the study, et cetera. But with animals, where we get them stem cells within 3 days of concussion, okay, we can completely reverse it, as shown by autopsies, obviously post-therapeutic and post-concussive autopsies, and maze tests where their function is restored. So that is something that fits to the NFL Players Association, as well as the NFL, because there's that's a huge thing, and I don't mean to get too far afield here with the NFL and concussions, but also National Hockey League, certainly boxing as segued from. That's an option that when the unfortunate event does happen, we can reverse it as long as we do it quickly. And even if we don't catch it right away, again with these post-concussion syndrome studies, we show that we can reverse a large part of it.
So I know that I've done stem cell therapy on my knee, and I did a book on that, so I know a little bit about it. I didn't want to harvest my 60-year-old stem cells from my back. I got some umbilical cells and down in Panama. But when it comes to storing your own for future, how many of those be viable if you stored it for like 20 years? I mean, would you have half of them still be working good enough? A decade
more than half. Yeah, we're storing it at 180 below in liquid nitrogen, so it's going to stay. They are going to stay viable, and you can always test for it using cytometry. And they're going to, when they harvest them, if they're and I'm not paid by American Cryo Stem. I am on their medical advisory board, but it's a publicly held company. What we do, and we're one of the first, is we harvest them again from the fat. We put them in there, but before we put them in storage, we'll run cytometry and see.
Okay.
Okay, you've got this many cells, and we can tell through third-party testing. So we can tell how much messenger RNA, the cytokines, the
Mhm.
growth factors, or many of them are contained loosely as well as inside the exosome. So we can evaluate and know what you're getting down the road. And
Yeah.
even with
Okay.
60-year-old cells, there is an advantage because they will tend to engraft versus with the umbilical cord tissue, they're really placeholders telling your own bone marrow, and you know this because you wrote
Yeah.
the book, right? But for those that don't know, and telling your bone marrow to make stem cells to come over here where the damage is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Come over here. Yeah. Yeah.
Each
I
has
had
their
my knee. The guy who did my knee did like a 500,000,000, and he did my knee. He did both knees, so they're both balanced. And he says, "Let me give you some IV too." So it's like the whole body got re-energized there. It was quite good. Yeah.
you go to Reardon's place in Panama.
Uh, no, it was I'm sorry, Costa Rica. I Reardon was too expensive. I met a guy in Costa Rica, actually, not Panama. Yeah.
Uh, in Costa Rica, it's Giampapa, right? Dr.
Um,
Giampapa.
Dr. Menses, he just passed away a few months ago. I'm sorry to say, but his clinic is still viable. Great guy. Like, yeah, I went down there for a 250,000. I mean, a quarter. Yeah, he bumped up to like 500,000,000 cells total. I'm like, okay, fine. It was, and they had some kind of guarantee if you don't like it, come back like 3 months later and get a second shot. So I did. I'm like, okay, fine. So I got double dose. It was really quite good. And I'm doing a new book for a guy, and he's building the largest clinic, regenerative clinic and stem cells and, HGH stuff down in Mexico. And it's like the largest, it's a really big joint down there. So he's not a doctor, he owns the place, Joshua Kettner. So I'm going to finish his book up probably this summer. It'd be interesting.
What's great about what's happening now in the U.S. is over the last few months in the Central District Court of California,
Yeah.
Dr. Berman was challenging the FDA's what do they call it? They considered stem cells a drug. Okay, so their categorization of stem cells as a drug was challenged, and he actually won. It was a very well written
Right.
decision by the judge, and the FDA had 30 days to counter the decision to file an appeal, and they didn't because. And I say this because yeah, everyone's frustrated with the FDA, but I think it came from a good place. As we all know, you and I have been around for 60 years. There's shysters, there's bad medicine, people that take advantage, yeah, for the money and don't do it the right way. And there's been harm done with stem cells or alleged
Yep.
stem cells or just not done properly, procedures with stem cells.
Right.
So I think the FDA had its heart in the right place. But, again, everyone rolls their eyes. Yeah, my own stem cells are a drug.
It's my own cells. Leave me alone. I want more of them and just spit them out. Give me the good stuff, put them back in, whatever. I mean, the PRP thing's been around a while. This is just better than that, so it's.
So that conception, as it were, was lost, and so it's opened up the door for us to use them, and now we're really regulated by state law. But we know they
Mhm.
work. You can go to just about any other
Yeah.
country, Japan, for example, Thailand,
Mhm.
and you see that. Oh yeah, there's plenty of studies, and you can talk to tons of
Yeah.
people and see the anecdotal results. But we have that now available to us in the U.S., so you won't have to travel. And it's part of the point of
Yeah.
the book is to let people know again, hey man, it's an option here.
Nah, finally. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's I did some what do they call it? Medical tourism in Thailand. It was amazing, however, because it wasn't even something new and freaky. It was just an eye exam. But I go over there and I need an appointment. I had my eyes, I had the floaties. I didn't know what they were. And I go there, there's like 4 women lined up, take your name, whatnot. They check me in instantly. I go see an eye doc, complete eye exam, tells you what the floaties are, gives you the prescription for, I had also conjunctivitis at the same time. Eye prescription, everything. It was like, how much is it? $40. Like $40. And I didn't have to wait. It was amazing concierge medicine. I just,
And did it
yeah,
work? Question. Did it work?
no, yeah, everything worked. I actually, and I had, before I had my ACL get worse, I had a knee exam there as well. Same thing. I went in, saw the person instantly. This is weird. Doctor spent about a half an hour working on my knee, checking out what's going on, had x-rays done. It goes, here's your bill. It's like, it's $15. I had an x-ray and a complete exam from an orthopedic, guy on my knee for $15. So it was like, okay, now stem cells, the prices aren't so cheap on stem cells there anymore, but I think you're better off, like you said, just sticking in the US and going to Santa Monica. You guys do that too? Do you use stem cell stuff? I know the peptide stuff. Do you do stem cells too with you guys?
Yeah.
All right.
For a while. Yeah. Until there was a period there where the FDA came down pretty hard on those that were using it because they changed rules. And so we had to park it for a while. But now, no, we're up and running again.
Nice. That's great news. All right. So make sure, check the link below, folks. The link for his book, show notes, as well as the clinic. We'll put that in there as well. So if you can go and check it out in Santa Monica. Is it in Santa Monica, your clinic?
That's the one where I am now. Yeah, we have one in Houston and one in Florida, but I would say the main, we'll call it, in Santa Monica. Yeah, thanks.
Beautiful. That's a great place to go. I like it there. Okay.
Yeah, we're
very good.
It's about 3 weeks of winter, unfortunately, but yeah, it's only 3 weeks. We'll make it.
Winter in Santa Monica. I'm sorry, I'm from Ohio. You're not going to get any sympathy here, doctor. Thank you very much.
No, I didn't expect it.
It's all right. Any parting words of wisdom on Healthspan or what you want to leave the viewers with today? Whoa. What happened to there we go. You're back. Sorry about that. I touched something.
Based on what we already covered, I would just say, in short, be your own best health advocate and learn what you can, not just from my book, but there's plenty out there now. And I learned the hard way. I went for many years. I broke my neck back in my early 20s and had some bad experiences with Western medicine, and lasted as long as I could, 33 years before I looked into it again. I sort of hobbled along, if you will. And I found out, after the fact, that I could have done some really cool things had I looked into it sooner. So I would, admonish even people to say, hey, get out there and look around, because even if you think, oh, I'm screwed based upon the last evaluation with a physician, things have changed. And so get out there and make yourself, make the knowledge that's out there available to you by digging in. And I hope the book that I published was helpful in that way.
Yeah, it's called Cheating. I got a couple referrals for you. One of my good friends, Dr. Lomax, is all about being the captain of your own ship. It's like we can yell at the institutions or pharma, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own body and health. So take charge.
It's true. Amen to that.
Yeah, very good. So the book's called Cheating Death. Check it out. Links below. Dr. McClain, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You bet. All right. And that concludes another episode of the Author Brand Show, where you're going to want to take notes. And if you didn't, like I said, the show notes are below. Check out this guy's book. He obviously knows what he's doing. He's a fit doctor, which is also a good sign that he practices what he preaches. That's it for today, and have a good day. We'll see you next time.